African society is believed to be structured largely around the lives of its children. Across the continent, children represent continuity with rituals and contemporary institutions designed to ensure children's survival and prosperity. At the same time, children are viewed in many African cultures as crucial to family survival itself. Child development is a process which every child goes through, and the experiences during the period will determine the kind of citizen the child will turn out to be, thereby making the process very important. Joining us in today's edition of Third Eye to critically dissect this subject is an environmentalist and executive director of Children and the Environment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Shalala Mutu to Third Eye. Child development in contemporary African society. Let's start with, what is child development?
Perhaps we should start with, what's a child? A child, according to UNICEF and according to the African Charter, is anyone from 18 years down to 0. So any child that is between the age of 0 to 18 develops in different ways. What are the things that we are to look out for a child between 0 to 18? There's a stage where it is a child begins to talk. There's a stage where the child begins to feed for themselves. There's a stage where the child crawls. There's a stage where the child begins to walk. There's a stage where the child plays, where it's assisted play. And there's also the stage where it is the child is allowed to go out and play by themselves. Now, children develop depending on their race, their class, their culture, the educational background, the environment that they grow up in, who it is that they live with, who it is that they interact with. So everything around the child determines how they develop. Let's say in time past, before we get to contemporary, there was a village setting. What's a village setting? Village setting where everybody is seen as one. Yeah. Okay, you stay in an environment where your neighbor is as good as your family.
Communalism.
Yes.
Where you commune together.
Yes, you can go and eat at your neighbor's place. You can sleep at your neighbor's place. Your neighbor is allowed to chastise you if they see you on the road for doing something wrong. Those are some of the values that we grew up with as an African child, as an African girl or boy. There's greeting. There are customs that we're used to. Bending down to greet as opposed to standing upright. Not being able to look straight in the eye of an adult when you're talking. So those are the kind of things that determine how it is a child actually develops. And then when you talk about contemporary, there's been a mixture. And I happen to have had let me say, privilege to have had an education, both Western and typical African, Nigerian. Plus the values that I had growing up in my home with my parents that had a mixture upbringing as well. They had both Nigerian, African, and Western upbringing. But at the end of the day, the values are morals, respect, communality, like you said, caring, loving, and showing it. Very, very important. Those things determine how it is I have grown up. Those things determine why it is I do what it is I do.
You said quite a lot. Will you say that the comments you made concerning where we're coming from the African perspective, you know, those primitive era, those olden days way of doing things, will you say they are better off compared to the contemporary that we have today?
Again, I talk about this mix and match. Everything shouldn't be written off, but everything isn't to be continued either. I'll give an example. When we're talking, because we're talking about children here, there's some cultural practices that should be stopped, eliminated. For example, female genital mutilation. It's a harmful practice. It's harmful to the girls that is being done to. It affects their future. It affects them having children. It makes the reason for it is something that they should have looked at and seen a better solution. Cutting off somebody's genitals, possibly getting them infected, is not the way to stop them from being sexually promiscuous.
Okay, and that's from the primitive point of view.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is one of those practices that should be stopped. Getting somebody shaven, sitting on a coal pot, drinking water from the body of their dead spouse is not a culture that should be continued. So it's not every single thing. However, the opposite, respect, is very important. I see less respect being shown to adults these days, okay? I believe that when I'm talking to you, I need to look at you in the eye. So that's one thing that I would say I don't agree with having to bend down low when you're talking to somebody, because I want to see, I read what it is you are saying from your, what do you say, your body movement, your body language.
Facial expressions and co.
Facial expressions, yes. But I also do not agree with something that started in even some so-called corporate organizations where it is you call your bosses by name, because that sometimes breeds disrespect. Hey, Cody, what's up? Excuse me? And so when I give you work to do, you're like, hey, what's going on? Sholabe, I can't do that. I mean, I don't, like, what? Because of that so-called modernization, contemporary, the gap closes up. Now, you can be friendly with somebody without being disrespectful.
Yes.
But because the values, like I said, are changing, there's less respect. You don't honor. Honor is not worshipping. You honor somebody who is older than you. Respect. You don't talk back. You don't shout at somebody who's older than you. Those kind of values should be maintained. Then helping. I mean, sometimes I go on the BRT in particular, because it's a fast, mode of transportation. You're sitting down there, and there's a young person there looking at all the people, some woman struggling with her back and everything, and he's sitting down and thinking, this woman is definitely not getting me out of this seat. And everybody's saying, get up, and he's like, I paid as well. In our olden days, you don't need to be told. It's part of the culture. It's part of what it is you learn. Respect has to do with giving an older person privileges. The person's old. And you also have to think, you're going to get old sometime.
But you paid for your transport.
You paid, yes. Now there aren't enough seats. But you are more likely to be able to cope with that timing from there to their standing.
Don't you think it is the fault of those who are supposed to provide enough buses, but they are providing few buses and then making it look crowded instead of having that same number of people to be there?
Yes. Now that has already happened. So you can't do anything about it. Government can do something about it. So until they provide more buses, what you can do as a child is at least show a little bit of respect and get up for an older person. And I said older in the sense that somebody who really looks like they're really old and they're uncomfortable.
What if, we live in a society where people may likely not have the privilege of 3 square meals a day at times, balanced diets, different things, and then, it requires a lot of energy to stand.
That's right.
And probably that child is coming from that point of view, and you wouldn't expect that child to continuously stand. Probably he or she may like to sit so that we, acquire some energy in order to get to the next level wherever he or she is going to. But you wouldn't know that.
I wouldn't know that, but I still believe that that child should stand up for an older person. Like I said, you have more energy than an older person. Somebody 60, 70, at any age below 18, you are very much likely, if you have been developed properly, because we're talking about people who have been developed properly, okay? If you have eaten, if you are in school, you are able to play, you're able to do all the things that you should do at that age, you are going to be able to withstand that more than an older person.
Okay, we are still trying to look at the primitive aspect.
Yes.
That's where we're coming from.
Exactly.
I don't believe something that is primitive is somehow contrary to the development of the society. Let's take a look at genital mutilation now.
Yes.
For the girl
Yes.
child,
Yes.
those who are still practicing it, is there no measure that should be put in place to deal with those people? Because to some people, that's our culture. And some other women, in fact, the women are usually responsible in doing that. Yes. So while you are saying no, it should be stopped, some women want it to continue. So which means it is us against us.
They want it to continue because they lack knowledge. They have been told, they have been taught that there's a link between sexual promiscuity and the female genitals, the way God made them, because you didn't make yourself anyway. And they believe that when they cut off a certain part, you are less likely to be promiscuous. I totally disagree with that. Totally. The fact that you're practicing something and it's been passed down doesn't mean that it is right.
And so why are they continuing?
I just said because that's what it is that they've been brought up to know. It is now up to those of us that know better to explain to them that some of the problems that the younger ones have had is because of this practice. Because they don't know. Somebody told them it is okay. Somebody needs to tell them it is not okay. Somebody needs to tell them that that infection that those girls had is from that. They don't know. Because they use 99% of the time, they're using unsterilized blades, which, like I said, is likely to get infection. They don't know that. That's what it is that their fathers and their mothers and their mother have been using. They don't know that. They think it's okay. They think that some of them even think that infection is all part of life. It should not be part of life.
Okay, so I know in those days, the village square, where they tell stories, where you learn different things, dance steps, you know, going to the stream, learning a whole lot of values.
Yes.
Today we know we have technology. You don't need to go to the stream, just open your tap, there's water. You don't need to go to the village square, you go to the cinema, and then you see a lot of things. Now, you must have experienced both. I know you must have been to the cinema too. I know you must also have experienced something associated with the village square. To an extent.
To an extent.
Okay. Now, will you say that the children being brought up on this side, where the primitiveness existed, and those from the contemporary world, which will you say are better fit to face the challenges of the society, the world at large?
When you talk about being better fit, I'll say that there are benefits of both. When we talk about communal living, which is this village square living that it is we talk about, children learn to interact with each other. We talk about telling stories, and I'm happy that you brought that up, okay? Children are sitting round in a circle. Children from the village, they already know each other because, like I said, they go to the stream together. They go to school together, so they get to know and talk with each other. Their parents have family meetings. They have village meetings, so they're already interacting with each other as well. So that's why they're like a family, and they know each other. And the villages are usually very small. So then that's where they learn morals. That's when they learn about culture. That's when it is they learn stories that have to do with life, and they get to ask questions. Fine. Now there's a moral aspect of that. Then the modern day cinema that you talk about, there's no interaction. You're sitting down in front of some technology, as you say, and you're just watching. You can't talk to whoever it is that's telling the story, even if it's in the form of acting or whatever. You can't ask questions. You can't interact. You don't know the people there. Now, in the cinema as well, except you've come with some friends or family, you don't know anybody. So you're all going there together and you all live out. There's no communality. There's no interaction there. Technology hasn't helped because, like I said, that communal living, that interaction, that care, that nurture, that I can go to somebody's house to find out what's happening is not there. You try to interact with a neighbor's child, and like I said, they're like, what's your business with my child? How dare you correct that child? That's up to me. It's my child. But it shouldn't be like that. That gate, that fence has created a wall that enables that. And it goes on in school as well. You have that, it's my class. You all come from different places. I'm happy that in public schools, for example, they try to do something. They try to ensure that if you want to go to Surulere Girls Grammar School, for example, that you live in Surulere. So that you leave, one, it's easier for you to get to school, when in those days all you had to do was walk anyway. And then you also hopefully live around the person and you get to know the person so that you know, why is Shade not in school today? You'll be able to go to her house. Thank God for technology. Technology isn't all bad. You can at least call Shade on the phone. Why, are you okay? And get a group of people to go there. So we can actually use technology in a positive way. I'm not saying technology is bad. I'm just saying that think about the things that we had learned earlier on and look at how you can actually use technology to bridge that gap that has been brought up.
Presently, there's this issue of public school, private school. Now, the orientation of the public school children are not usually the same thing with private school kids.
You're right.
So who is creating this dichotomy, this divide? Will you say it's the parents? Will you say it's the government of the day who are constantly bringing up different measures to widen the gap, or rather to bridge the gap?
I'll say again both. Talking about education, we go into child rights. Every child has a right not only to education, but to a good education. Good education. So whether you're in a public school or in a private school, you are entitled, it is your right as a child to have good education. So a private school that is charging fees, whether it is low or high, you are charging, the parents are paying, you must give the child a good education. You must have good basic facilities, which of course, talking about the building, the chairs, the table, the teachers, and everything that the child needs for a good education. The books. In a public school, the government that has set up the public schools have a right to ensure that the teachers in those public schools are knowledgeable, that they have passed the kind of test that they should to be able to teach any child. The truth of the matter is that any child should be able to go to public or private school. Unfortunately, that is not the case. You're talking about a gap. There's some private schools that have become, when I say, almost at least beyond the reach of the average Nigerian. Let's even talk about Nigeria, although it's very similar in Africa, because I have friends in Senegal, in Ghana, who are in education, and the same thing is happening there. So private schools, some of them, why? It's parents. This elitist thing is growing. And so I believe that I've arrived with the kind of income that I'm earning. I want my child to go to a certain school. I want the fees to be a certain amount so that I will get the kind of things that I want. For example, something like air-conditioned classroom. It costs a lot of money. I don't know why a child needs to have air-conditioned classrooms. Okay, then they want technology. They want the latest for their children. That costs money. So they want the fees to be very high. They want to be able to say, my child goes to this school and the fees are a certain million. That's how much I pay. So the parents are part of those people widen that gap. The public schools should be such that anybody that comes out of a public school, either a public primary school, public secondary school, or university, is able to compete favorably well with their contemporary in a private school, private primary, secondary, or university. Very important. Now, what do you do to that for that to happen? The facilities, starting from the building itself, is important that it's conducive. It doesn't have to be air-conditioned. It has to be conducive for learning. Now, the equipment that the children need should also be there. I'm seeing something that I want to believe happened ages ago, but I'm made to believe it's happening now. Seeing students still sitting outside on the floor when they're supposed to be in. That's a school? That shouldn't happen. I'm seeing children in classes where their tables are bricks. That shouldn't happen. How is that child supposed to learn like that? And then the teachers. It is unfortunate that teaching is not as attractive as it was in those days. When I went to school, our teachers were revered. In fact, our parents were like, our parents looked up and respected the teachers. These are the people who are teaching your children, who are going to become whatever it is you pray that they will become in future. Now, somebody says, I'm a teacher, you're looking down on that person like, oh.
Some still go out of their way, aside from the money the government pays,
yes.
They still pay extra to the teacher.
They
Please,
pay
I need
extra
you to take good
do
care
that.
of my
yes. Now,
word.
If you decide to appreciate a teacher, because even that happens even in private school. I worked in a private school. Okay, so I know that when I was there, for example, we had people who, maybe parents at the end of the session, feel that, I'll give you a real example. There was a student in my class, I taught in a primary school, who didn't do very well. And I got close to all my students. I got quite concerned about her. Found out she was an only child, found out that she didn't, her mother was very busy, found out that she didn't have that care and love. She wasn't used to this communal living we're talking about, and she felt a bit out of place. So I decided to work on her. The bottom line is that by the time it is I finished, with the help of the other students, this girl who was usually coming like maybe the end, the bottom line of the line, she came third. Her mother was elated. Her mother traveled and came back and gave me all kinds of gifts just to say thank you. The girl herself was happy because her self-esteem was boosted. Okay, so yes, parents do sometimes appreciate the teachers in private school as well as public schools. Now in public school, it's government's duty to pay. They need to pay the teachers very well. They need to pay the teachers. Education, unfortunately, is something that we appreciate, but when it comes to money, we don't. In terms of how much the teacher gets paid, they don't get paid much. If you're sitting down in a room full of people, you are likely to be able to point out to say, this person is a teacher, by the way they are dressed. And that shouldn't be the same. They should be, you should look at all of them, whether it is you're a banker, you're an in the oil and gas, you're a teacher, you should be able to wear the same thing. You should be able to dress the same thing. You should have the same look because you're all working.
But the salaries are not the same.
The salaries are not the same. You should look, a teacher should look like you. If they decide to be corporated. Yes, I know. If they decide to dress corporately, they should. If they decide to dress otherwise, they should also look good, clean, neat, and attractive.
Here in Nigeria, there is always Children's Day.
That's right.
Celebration. So what should a typical government be looking at in Children's Days?
A Children's Day, I believe that the government should go to schools. You know, it's usually, it's a day where children have their own public holiday. They need to go to the schools and see what it is that is there. See the facilities. It's a day that, you know how it is when we used to have sanitation day. then that's when government officials go around to see what's happening. Is it clean? Is it dirty? They should do that for the schools. Let them go around and see the facilities. Let them go around and get the teachers to talk to them. I don't know if you remember somewhere in Edo State where it is they interviewed, the governor interviewed some of the teachers and principals, and they couldn't speak properly. They couldn't answer the questions. And there was an uproar because they were going to be sanctioned. And people were like, why should they be sanctioned? And I was thinking, excuse me, would you want your child to go to that school? How should they be sanctioned? Not a matter of punishment. They need to get those people educated. They need to put them in proper teacher training school. If they don't have it, they need to find out why it is they're there in the first place. What went wrong? Because our teachers had good education. The people who taught me had very good education, just as good as my parents. And that should continue. Unfortunately, like we said, what's happening now is the people who are going into teaching, into education, are not necessarily the best anymore. But it's not lost, because in a lot of private schools, I have friends who own schools, who are proprietors of schools, who have very good education, top-class education, both here and abroad. That should happen in public schools as well. You don't just bring out the dregs, all the people who can't find any, good university to get in, let them come in. Anybody who can't find a job, let them come into teaching. No, we're going to have problems later on with our children if that continues.
Okay, nice. Let's throw this open to our audience now. Questions, comments, and contributions.
I want to thank you first and foremost, but I believe human beings are resources, just like any normal resources you can get outside there, just like your gold and your crude oil. And there is a skill that is actually required to harness that productivity inside of them. And I believe not all parents or people out there really have this key to actually harness the resources which is inside of their children, even children that are outside. So I really want you to help people that are out there. If you can give us some theory for child development or human resource development that will help the ordinary parents that is out there and equip them to bring out that reality which is inside their child, even when they are not getting it from the schools or the society. Thank you.
The first thing I'll say is interest. The parents need to be interested in their children. Now that's something you can't teach a parent. You can advise them. That's what I was talking about when I talk about nurturing. If you grow up nurturing, if you grow up with love, you will learn to show love. You can't give what you don't have. What does my child actually want? What does my child want to become? My belief, unlike a lot of people, is that children should read anything and everything. Anything and everything. So, if Zokoli is interested in football, for example, which I'm not interested in, I will ensure that you get as many materials on football as possible for you to read. Why I say that? What I find these days is that children only read what it is that they're given in school. Their texts, and that's it. They don't read outside that. So that's what I mean, anything and everything, read widely. That's why it is a parent must have interest, because you then look at what it is that person is reading. Of course, there are books that are age appropriate. So when I say anything and everything, let me extend it to your own age. Of course, a 2-year-old shouldn't be reading a book of a 15-year-old.
Because I was wondering how.
So that's why I said, let me say that. So anything and everything within that age bracket. Okay. Because there are books that have been written for everybody, even a 0-year-old, that you can read to them, up to 18. Now, what does that do? Because you're interested in football, and I've given you the liberty to read up on literature that has to do with football, you tend to see books as interesting, even though you're only reading about that. Now, so we start there. I start from the known to unknown. And then I now give you books on other subjects. Because you already see books as interesting, you want to read. And so we have some kind of exchange. You read this book, you've read your book, then you read my book as well. I don't enjoy football. I'm totally disinterested in it. But because you do, I will look for somebody who does play football, who plays it well, who is interested in it, and take you to that person. Okay. So parents can do that, to answer his question. Because he talked about parents who may not have that. I don't have it, but there are people who do. So you go out of your way to find out. How do you find out? From your friend, from your neighbor, from your colleague. You find out so that that child gets to develop their interest?
While I was growing up, I wanted to join the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
You know, I love the Boy Scouts, the way they dress, wearing green and all those things. And so one day I went to join Boy Scouts. So by the time I came back home, my father asked me, where are you coming from? I attended Boy Scout meeting. Boys what? Boy Scout. Boy Scout, what is Boy Scout? You know, he's a typical Igbo man, and he now asked, in Igbo, does Boy Scout give money? So I didn't know the answer to give him, and that was my end of.
It's rather unfortunate that you couldn't continue with Boy Scout, because I was a Girl Scout.
Really?
Yes. My parents encouraged me. In fact, my mother would take me to Girl Guides club meetings. Okay, it was what which is you go to Brownies, from Brownies you go to Girls Guide, and that I believe has helped me. Perhaps because my parents came from that kind of upbringing as well, and they're very much focused on service, you know, and they grow up with Lionism and that kind of thing. But if they don't, now I don't like the idea of children keeping secrets, because it becomes dangerous. You are interested in something, your parent isn't interested. What you really should have done is to get your Boy Scout Association leader to talk to your parents, because your parents lacked knowledge about Boy Scouts. That's why they didn't allow you to do it.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, letting the person with knowledge tell that adult what exactly it's about.
All right, let's hear more comments, questions, and contributions.
Talking about respect and communism, what happens when my neighbor or, you know, an adult I look up to and I respect starts molesting that child? What happens?
Molestation. That's child molestation.
Child molestation,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Now that is what it is I talk about when a secret can be dangerous. Either from your colleague, your contemporary, your friend, or an adult. And you are being molested as a child, and the person says, keep it a secret. Now that is one secret you shouldn't keep. That's why it is I said secrets can be dangerous. I'm happy that, like I said, technology has its benefits, okay? Because of social media now, Facebook and all the works, we are getting to know that there's a lot of child molestation going on. And I hear things like, oh, how come it's on the increase? It's not on the increase. From when I was little, my mother would tell you that there was child molestation in her days. And I know that there was in my days as well. It's just that technology is helping us bring it out into the open. So that is one thing that children can use. A lot of children have access to technology. They can use it.
So, which means bringing up a child in the contemporary African society, yes, comes with a whole lot of positive
it comes with a lot of positive attached, but you need to,
based on the technology,
you need to be careful with technology. Let me give you an example. There's some apps that are dangerous that children don't know. They go into it and it's fun. Eventually what happens, somebody's luring you as a child into sex. That's technology. Something that is just between you and yourself, because it's a phone that you have, it's an app on that phone, and your parents don't know. And when they're coming in, you turn it off. In university, because now we have children who are 18. Before, you have to be like 20-something. You have 18, you have 15-year-olds. You have, I know of a 9-year-old getting to university. Now, what happens then? When we had all these networks, giving them free airtime from midnight, when they get to school, they're nodding. So the lecturers had to stop them and say, no more. No more. Number one, you don't even bring it to class. So, because it's going to affect you, you're supposed to be listening to your lecturer, you're going, chatting, you know, playing games and doing all that. So those are the negative sides of technology. Now, the parents need to also learn technology. They need to upgrade their knowledge so that they would actually be able to share what it is, the positive knowledge that they are gaining with their children. I believe that this storytelling of those days, those are the things that used to happen. If there were phones then, That's probably what might have happened. Perhaps like we'll all sit down in a circle with all our phones and we all decide, for example, okay, today, what are we going to discuss? We're discussing something. We use our apps.
We are using
We're using this
apps,
about this and everything and all of that.
Wow.
So things can be done using technology to give a positive end for the child.
Will we say the reason why the African community is not developed till now, is it contingent of the lack of development of the African child?
It is sad that our children are growing up and seeing themselves as citizens of a country or a nation that's underdeveloped. When I grew up, I never thought about myself as someone coming from the third world. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it that I was coming from an Africa that's underdeveloped. I didn't think like that. Why? Because of our leaders in those days. The Kwame Nkrumah, the people who we looked up to, the Counters, the ones those days, we looked up to them. We looked up to being a leader in whatever field that we had decided to be in. So I didn't even, I mean, we traveled abroad. We went to Britain, we went to, I went to Russia, I went to all these countries, and apart from the misunderstanding of color and race, which is a totally different thing, I didn't feel that I was any less than them. I went to school in the UK, and I went and I sat down with people from China, from Japan, from the UK, from America, you know, we're all contemporaries. So I didn't feel less than them. I didn't feel like I was in third world.
Probably because you didn't spend almost all your life within the confinement of Nigeria and Africa. You were in Britain, you were in Russia, you were all over the place. So, but for those who were not having that kind of opportunity that you had to be there, don't you think that they will feel that way?
They will feel what they will. That's what I'm saying. That it's unfortunate that they are feeling that like that. It's unfortunate that that's what our leaders are doing. Now, our leaders have to consider the children in what they're doing, because right now, as far as I'm concerned, they're just selfish and greedy. They don't care. They don't care what's going to happen. They don't care. They're forgetting that very soon they're going to pass away. The truth of the matter is that we are not going to be here forever. And whatever it is we do now, it's going to have a positive or negative effect on the children later on. And that's why it is, I say, technology can be used for good for the children that are coming up. And that's why I say parents now need to embrace technology and use it, learn it, embrace it, use it for good, so that the children that are using it would also learn from them, and vice versa.
Thank you so very much for coming to tell me. Please, another round of applause for yourself. Thank you. Yes. This is where we call it a day on today's edition of Third Eye. Join us on another edition. I'm Mozi Okoli saying bye-bye for now.